argument flies completely past them. They are not engaged in the process of refining and changing their thinking based on evidence. They have simply made assertions, and they continue, as I think Dr. Kingsley pointed out today, they continue to repeat these assertions in light of the evidence. There's transitional fossils all over the place. They've also occasionally put their toes in the water of genetics, and they've articulated positions that are absolutely inconsistent with what we know about a century of genetics. It doesn't matter about the bigger evolutionary picture. Their genetic arguments simply don't work. They're stillborn. And so they're trying to wrap some kind of scientific credibility around this notion, but whenever they put scientific content into their argument or their literature, it's been an utter failure. And when those critiques have appeared from the scientific community pointing out all of their errors, they are deaf to them. And that's why, speaking of my own opinion, but I think it represents a fair number of scientists, they have no credibility in the scientific community. They are not engaged in the same process that we are of putting ideas forth, having them shot to pieces, and rebuilding them from those fragments. They are just deaf, dumb, and blind when it comes to engagement with the scientific community.
The point is, it's not a question they're bad scientists, it's that they're non-scientists. This is, I think, is a very important issue, because it's not that these are scientists who are not doing good scientific work. These are people who are not doing science.
That's it.
Do you think that in our lifetime we will witness a jump in evolution, either in humans or in some type of creature? And if so, how do you think the religious world will react to that?
That's for you guys.
Is that us? Do you want me to do this one first? Okay. So I'm going to take that. I feel that's a nice open question. A jump in evolution. Remember, evolution is not necessarily progressive. So you are witnessing a jump in evolution. You're witnessing a major extinction underway right now. That's what I wanted to comment on at the end. And so what you're likely to see in another century is a lot less than what was here this century, and a lot less than what was here 100 and 200 years ago. And certainly, unless we manage things better. I mean, this is not, some radical environmentalism. The facts are there that populations and ecosystems are under such damage. Now, you're probably saying, are we going to see some kind of easily observable evolution in some population? Would that change people's thinking? Remember, evolution takes a while, and so to see it, you either have to look at viruses and microbes if you want to see it on the order of days or weeks, or maybe you can look at some populations of mammals and birds on the order of decades, and maybe some other things on the order of centuries, and see things that are very obvious. There's plenty of examples of measurement of change in populations on that scale. We didn't emphasize too many of those. If we had done some section today about microbial evolution, you'd see natural selection at work in microbial populations and everything we've talked about playing out on the level of single-cell organisms. That information generally tends to be discounted by the evolution denial crowd as microevolution, and therefore they're not willing to extrapolate what you can observe in days in microbes to the building of an eye or something like that. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. I think you're saying, could there be something that's somewhat shattering or somewhat revolutionary in theology? I think the mind-blowing discovery of this century, or who knows when, would be the discovery of life somewhere else in the universe, and the study of what the basis of that life might be. How many times did life evolve? How did it get around the universe? What's the complexity of that life? What's the differences in chemistry? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have any pet theories about what that would be, but I think a lot of scientists expect that it will be found. And that might be yet another huge leap in terms of humans confronting that, we're not the center of the solar system, we're not the center of the universe, we're not the apex species, we're just another schmuck riding along on the surface of the planet.
I got something.
I'm quitting. Dr. Kingsley he's going to be moderator from now. You're going to take over.
I'll call him. Yeah, how about you?
Recently in some public school systems, the proposal has been made that students should be told by their teachers or maybe by their textbooks that evolution is only a theory and not a fact, and other theories on this subject exist. Personally, I feel that this is wrong and that this should not be put into practice, but how do you feel? Is this appropriate or not?
I think it's completely inappropriate. It's denying the fact of evolution. The idea that we decide at the ballot box to stick a sticker on a book that says, don't believe this because we wish it wasn't true, is absolutely ridiculous. You know, we've tried to show you the overwhelming sets of evidence from all sorts of different fields that support that biological evolution occurs. It's a fact. It isn't a theory. There's no other theory that explains that body of evidence with anywhere near, not even close, the level of support that comes from this theory, which is why scientists believe it. Now, for lots of people, it's uncomfortable. That is not a reason to stick a sticker on a science book and say we wish it was different.
Sure. I'd only add, and you're probably all aware of this, the people that want something like that written are using theory in a very different sense from the way scientists use the word theory. Just a theory. Well, science in principle would never say that it has the absolute, final, ultimate, unimpeachable answer to anything. It's always, in principle, falsifiable. But in terms of being well-grounded, David's totally correct. You'll never get something better founded, I think, than this.
I'm going to take a quick shot because the one thing that's also missed, again, in the current media, I have not seen them have constitutional scholars, either in print or on news programs at night, to talk about the long legacy of this battle in the U.S. federal court system. You may know there's court cases pending right now at the federal level regarding making that disclaimer at the beginning of classes regarding intelligent design. There's going to be a decision handed down either this month or next month. But there's a long history of case law where stickers were banned. This is in February out of Georgia, where the teaching of so-called creation science, which was an incarnation before this, there's a long stretch of case law that I'm hoping is going to be upheld. Of course, we have some concerns about changes in the judiciary these days, but there's a tremendous amount of case law that supports that anything with religious content cannot be introduced in the public schools because of the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. So this is not just a scientific matter, it's a legal matter. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
There's many theories as the theory of evolution, whereas in physics there's many laws which are just accepted as true.
Inviolate laws versus theory. Maybe making a distinction between law and theory?
Yeah. What is that distinction?
I'm not sure I know the best way to answer that. Would any of you?
Well, first of all, I would draw a distinction, say, between pure ideas like mathematics and logic, where these are not empirical claims, and I think their necessity, if you like, lies elsewhere. I'm not quite sure where it does, but I don't see 2 + 2 = 4 as just a generalization from experience. So I don't think that's going to be overthrown, although, of course, as we've seen, one might say have an alternative geometry or something like that. The question then is whether it applies to any world-like systems. Now, as far as scientific claims are concerned, I suspect you're probably right. I cannot ever see us going back to saying the Earth is the center of the universe. And frankly, I pretty much got to the point, I can't ever see us going back to evolution didn't occur. Having said that, an awful lot is still up for grabs, as obviously the revolution at the beginning of the last century over Newton versus Einstein clearly shows. I mean, 150 years ago, everybody would have said that Newton's, as they did say, as certain as 2 + 2 = 4. And then, whoops, apparently not. Now, I'm not going to say that we're going to overthrow natural selection as such, but I would say that people like Sean Carroll, in the last 20 years, have shown us that natural selection doesn't necessarily work in the way that people thought, say, 50 years ago, say in 1959, at the time of the anniversary of the origin of species, the 100th anniversary. So the point is, science is both stable, but at the same time, always open to, if you like, check, refinement, and significant change. I mean, I think that Darwin I think there's no person in this world, if I can put it this way, whom Darwin wouldn't like to have an evening with more than with Sean Carroll. I think he would absolutely